Gowan. Inside Strange Animal. During the next half hour, the thoughts and music of Gowan, one of Canada's brightest new talents. Gowan's musical background includes classical training.
I just wanted to make sure that I had my chops together before I actually went out and tried to do something on my own. I just didn't want to one day have to turn around and say, well, yeah, I can write songs, but I can't really play. When I'm writing a song, I never refer back to, hey, what would Wagner do here? Or, I wonder where Mozart would have taken this thing. That doesn't come up, because when you're writing a rock song, all I'm thinking about is, am I saying something here, or is this going to communicate something? Because that's all rock music really is. And does it communicate it on a true energetic level? You see, a lot of classical music being so cerebral, I don't know, I mean, the communication is kind of the aesthetic type, you know, and I still like rock and roll to communicate on a gut level. I still think that's the most important thing, and the best classical music does that.
Like so many before him, Gowan caught the rock and roll bug in high school.
Played all the way through high school, just a lot of church halls around Toronto. And then Rheingold was my first band, and we played for a few years in the clubs, and we became a fairly successful club act. And then when that came to the end of its life, it was like, should I completely just pack it in? This didn't make it. I gave it my best shot. Is that all there is? You know, if you take the negative feelings that can bombard you when you're on the road in a bar band like that, there are so many downsides to it. Eventually, I think that wears people down. However, there's one firm positive to it, and that's what I took away from it, and that is that playing live is still the most important thing, and knowing that if you can really hit people with a live performance, then the challenge should be how to capture that live thing on record, or, well, today in video. You go through phases. I just feel now that I've finally arrived, and I don't regret any one of those steps.
1982, Gowan's debut album for CBS.
The songs from the first album, a couple of the real strong ones, Jet White, Keep Up the Fight, those two songs, in the demo stage, they sounded quite a bit different from what's on the record, and that's not to say that what's on the record isn't well done, because the playing is meticulous, but it wasn't indicative of the sound that I was hearing in my own head. I will defend those songs because they're still very strong songs, but I hear the new material as being a step beyond what happened on that first record.
For his second album, Strange Animal, Gowan contacted producer Dave Tickle, whose credits include Red Rider, Split Enz, and Peter Gabriel.
Dave Tickle was the guy that was able to take the multitude of ideas that I have, pare them all down, and say, this is what you're really good at, these are all the extra things that you don't need. And that was the difference that he made, because I hadn't really been disciplined in rock music. I'd been disciplined when I played classical music, but nobody had ever said, this is where you rock really right, and this is where you lose it. And then when I would say, yeah, but what about this and what about this, he'd go, never mind that. You've got a strong melody. You're saying something right here. Let me put your voice in the center of it. And I'm like, oh, well, okay, we'll try it that way. I would have a lot of extra keyboard parts that I'd like to put on that he would say, forget that. You know, there's an old saying that says, plenty spoils the melody. I think that's one of the truest things, because before we even started the record, I didn't believe that. I thought, well, it's all enhancement. And yet you listen to the purest rock and roll, and it's always simple. He was able to simplify the musical and lyrical statements that I was making without altering any of the melody or without altering a single word. He just took the demos and made them into clear, concise records.